I want to get back to this. I want to get back to this point again that we're. You might think, you might have the perception that everything is for free or something like that. But again, it's taxed. One of the most highly taxed people in the world. So again, we're paying for all these things. Yet, when the government has a monopoly on these things to offer, talk about healthcare, the hospital situation, it's really bad. It's really poor. The service, if you can call it that the government is providing is very bad. But there's so few private hospitals that there's no option. There's no competition. There's no reason for the government to try anything harder because there's no one offering a better service when it comes to this. I mean, I took a cat to the vet. It got better treatment than my mom did, who ended up in the hospital. And went quicker. It ended up costing less. You still pay money when you go to the hospital. It costs money. Although they take 33% from you from your income, then 25% at least sales tax on everything across the board.
Wow.
We're so highly taxed. It's amazing. So I encourage this person anyway, just to finish that point, to really try to get into the civilization, into the society. And in some cases, you need to live here for a year, maybe even 2 years before you really get the feel and the sense of things. You can visit, and it might be a surface which kind of looks good. Well, I don't think that personally, because I've been traveling around the country. I've been seeing some of these smaller areas, the horrible million program, as was called, when the government decided to wreck all these wonderful old wooden houses in Gothenburg, in Stockholm, and in some of these outside cities, because they had determined under this million program that we must have update how people live. So they created these projects, the million project of these 1 million homes were supposed to were built for Swedes. And travel around in the suburbs and look at some of these houses now, and tell me if you're not back in Soviet Russia when you see some of these buildings. It's
beautiful concrete horrible. Cubicles for all, right?
Yes, exactly. And so that's my point. What I'm getting at is that I think we can achieve something better, something greater. The society has stagnated, and I'm seeing that across. I mean, all the countries around the world has different problems. I'm not advocating and saying that somewhere else is better. Really, I'm just trying to see what the problem is here. This is within the line of thinking locally, okay, look at what's happening around you and try to observe that and share that knowledge with people around the world who are willing to listen, so that when a system like this is being offered to the rest of the world, that they can make up their mind in the right way instead of just be given the propaganda about it.
I think the thing that people should be taught, and thanks, Stephen, for that email, because you set off some good discussion here with it. The thing about it is you can succeed. There is this thing called individual achievement, initiative, stuff like that. Henrik, before we get too far away from this, I wanted you to finish up on the stolen child. So let's just go from sixth gear back down into third, and tell me about this child that was taken away from these people by the state.
Absolutely. Christer Johansson, the father, and his wife Annie got their child, Dominic Johansson, stolen from them by the Swedish social services. The fact is that so far no Swedish, Nordic media for that matter, has touched the story. Yet we hear, about human rights abuses from every other country all the time. One of the problems, and I believe one of the reasons for this, is because the papers in Sweden get press subsidies, meaning they get money from the state. Great. Now, so are they going to, attack the hand that feeds them in a sense? Of course not. It's not going to happen. So that's a major problem right there. So CBN, the Christian broadcasting network from America, had to come over here to Sweden to actually do a first-time interview with Christer and his wife Annie to cover this horrible story. And I saw it not too long ago, and it's just incredible to me. This was just in the window, a little bit before homeschooling actually was banned in Sweden. So the parents had actually gotten the go-ahead from the authorities in Stockholm first to do this, to homeschool their child. But right when they were actually going to leave for the mom's, original home in India, they were going to go back there, do some, help aid work and things like that. So they were heading back there, and then the local authorities on the island of Gotland, which is, kind of a little bit east of Sweden, outside of Sweden, yep. They decided to actually take Dominic away. So while they were on the plane, they caused this whole ruckus scene where they're taking away the child. The mother, by the way, has had so many issues with panic attacks since this time that she hardly can even talk about it. They totally destroyed this family. And when they were taking Dominic away, he was actually he was throwing up so much that they had to take him to the ER room because of his body response to this horrible, abusive situation that they put this family through right there on the plane when everybody stared, and you can just imagine the silence, of course, of everybody. And they have not been able to see him. They've seen him sporadically since, but they don't even know where he is. They've been working for this case now on it for over 2-3 years. Again, it's a long story, and people can listen to it to themselves. But it's just amazing. I mean, and then later on, the social services came up with these reasons that, Dominic has cavities, so that's a problem. Well, what kid doesn't have a cavity? That's just ridiculous. And you don't have enough furniture at home was one of the reasons. So they don't have enough, IKEA furniture in their decorated little, apartment that the government has slammed up for them to be okay. See, this is the problem. They set the standard of how you should live your life. Again, I'm not saying that it's all that bad. People might say, okay, well, this is really bad because there's people starving around the world. There's lots of problems happening, and here you are, kind of your little brat, me in this case, trying to criticize this wonderful system that we have here. But what I'm getting at is something deeper, something beyond the physical comfort, something that goes into the psychic realm, the mental realm. There's more things happening, brewing underneath the surface that are really, really bad, really dark. There's a reason why this movie and the book, the girl with the dragon tattoo, coming out from this society, because that's a message being sent across the world. And that's why it's gotten so huge in a sense, where things are so perfectly polished, clean on the surface. There's things happening underneath, and that's the subconscious energy flow that's speaking to the rest of the people, like, you better watch out here because something's going on.
Yes, a little bit too sterile. That obsession with sterility, sort of smacks of the unclean collective mind. So, let me ask you this now: privacy, controlled press. I mean, does the government spy? Is dissent tolerated, or does anybody even know of anything to dissent about? I mean, what are the privacy issues there, or is there any privacy? Is it all just open? Sort of sounds like it is.
Well, this is I think the perception is that it's an open society. This has been talked about all the time. But then we have cases like this Dominic case. It's very much the lid is being put on, hence people don't hear about these cases. So nobody knows that it's really happening. People have a tendency not to communicate with each other. I'm still trying to figure this one out, why this is the case, why it is that something which should be a component, especially of a kind of a more of a collectivist culture. You think that people are more open, they talk with each other, and again, just to have that disclaimer in there. There always is people that are breaking this mold where things are better. They're open-minded. It's good. They're trying. They understand the problems. But again, I'm just speaking generally of the observations that I've made of the society. So it's not that you really need surveillance cameras everywhere. Because, I don't think that there is not crime in Sweden. Of course there is. But again, it's this veneer that things are very secure and taken care of. So, and people are, in a sense, even policing themselves. So this is the next step of the police state, when you don't even need an infrastructure for those kinds of things. So again, on the surface, it might look, that's great. See, the government trusts their people. There's not too much surveillance cameras. There's not too much, tagging and stuff. But at the same time, if you look beneath the surface, if you look into the bureaucracy of things, that certainly is invasion there. Sweden has spearheaded so many different things within the New World Order. Let me just give you a few examples of this. We were the first country, for instance, to start surveying the population, the numbers. The Lutheran Church began with that in the 1600s. They kept the records in the parish register. The church in this case is the New World Order. If anybody have doubts about that, the evidence is in the expansion that it made in Sweden. First the Roman Church, then the Lutheran, and of course how they made it. They've tortured and hunted and suppressed and disciplined these people for more than 1,000 years, I would say. It's incredible. And they even used the Vikings, by the way, to do their battles for them over, fighting our Celtic brothers over in Scotland and England. It's incredible. So all of this history has been suppressed, first of all. But just to go back to some of the spearheading things, we were the first country in Europe to issue banknotes. The first European banknotes were issued by Stockholm's Banco, the predecessor of the Bank of Sweden, back in 1661. We're the first country who has initiated a central bank, the Swedish Riksbank, founded in 1668. And, I've heard people argue before that Sweden in many ways are behind many of these ideas of the banking structure and the system in that way. So the control structure has been perfected over many, many hundreds of years in this case. We have the issue of personal numbers. You need a number that you're given associated with your birth date. You can make a move without it. You have mandatory ID cards. And flavor of things to come, by the way, is we're the first society they're going to aim to get completely cashless. This is a report that came out a couple of days ago, actually, now.
Let's talk about that when we come back from this break, Henrik. We're going to have to take a hard one here. We've got a lot of breaks, but I want to hear about this cashless thing that's coming as we continue our singular discussion with Henrik Palmgren on Coast to Coast AM.